Get in now. 2 words. That was all Tyler said when the black SUV pulled up beside me on the deserted street. My wife's brother was unrecognizable, unshaven, red-eyed, hands shaking on the steering wheel. The same man who 3 years ago had accused me of being responsible for his sister's disappearance. I hesitated for a second, my hand on the door handle. Part of me knew that getting into that car would change everything. But the other part, the part that had spent 1,095 days searching for answers, couldn't resist. My name is Jordan, I'm 32 years old, and my wife Lila disappeared without a trace on a Tuesday morning exactly 3 years ago. She left for work as she always did, kissed my forehead, and said, "I love you" at the door. She never came back. The police closed the case after 18 months. No evidence of a crime, no signs of a struggle, no body. To them, Lila had simply decided to start a new life somewhere else. To her family, I was the negligent husband who failed to protect her. To me, it was a nightmare that refused to end. I got into the SUV. Tyler drove silently through the familiar streets of Portland, but toward a part of town I rarely visited. The smell of new leather mixed with cold coffee filled the interior of the vehicle. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles were white. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. "Somewhere you need to see," he replied without taking his eyes off the road. "Something I found last week. Something about Lila." My heart raced. In 3 years, this was the first time someone in her family had talked to me about her without accusations or coldness. Tyler had been especially cruel, even confronting me publicly at the symbolic funeral they had organized 6 months after her disappearance. "What did you find?" I insisted. He glanced in the rearview mirror, as if checking to see if we were being followed. "You need to understand something first, Jordan. I've spent the last 3 years hating you. I was sure you had done something to her. That you were lying to all of us. And now..." Tyler swallowed hard. "Now I know who really lied. And it wasn't you." The SUV stopped in front of an old commercial building in the city's industrial district. Tyler turned off the engine but remained motionless, his hand still on the steering wheel, breathing heavily. "Before we leave," he said slowly, "I need you to understand that everything I think I know about my sister's disappearance was wrong. Everything. And if I'm right about what I've discovered," he paused, finally looking at me, "Lila didn't disappear by chance. And she may be closer than we think." His words echoed in the silence of the car like a punch in the stomach. 3 years of searching, 3 years of guilt and despair, and now Tyler was telling me there was something none of us knew. I got out of the car with shaky legs, following him to the entrance of the building. If you're following this mystery story and want to discover the truth with me, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any details. As Tyler searched his pocket for his keys, a question hammered in my head. If Lila hadn't simply disappeared, if there was something sinister behind it all, who had an interest in making her disappear? And why now, after 3 years, was the truth finally coming to light? Tyler led me down a dimly lit hallway to a small room at the back of the building. The place smelled of mold and old paper. A metal table occupied the center, covered with photographs, documents, and what appeared to be surveillance equipment. "Sit down," he said, turning on a table lamp that revealed the extent of the material scattered there. "I need to start at the beginning." I recognized some of the photos immediately. They were of Lila, but not the ones I knew. These had been taken secretly, her leaving a building I had never seen, talking to people I didn't recognize, wearing clothes that weren't in her wardrobe. "Tyler, what is this?" He picked up a folder marked with a date 2 weeks before Lila's disappearance. "I started to suspect you after she went missing. So I hired a private investigator to look into your movements in the weeks before. I wanted proof that you were hiding something." My stomach clenched. "And did you find it?" "Yes and no." Tyler spread more photos on the table. "I found out that Lila was lying about a lot of things. But not to protect you. It was the opposite." The images showed Lila entering and leaving an elegant office in the city center. The sign at the entrance read Cromwell and Associates Financial Consulting. In the following photos, she appeared talking intensely with a man in an expensive suit, gray hair, and a stern expression. "Who's this guy?" I asked, pointing to the man. "Richard Cromwell, senior partner at the firm." Tyler picked up another folder. In the last 6 months before she disappeared, Lila met with him at least 3 times a week. Always at times when you thought she was at work at the flower shop. My head was spinning. Lila never mentioned knowing anyone named Cromwell. Why would she be secretly meeting with a financial advisor? That's the question that's been tormenting me for months, Tyler replied, pulling up a chair. Until I found this last week. He placed a brown envelope in front of me. Inside was a copy of a life insurance policy. My name was listed as the beneficiary of a $2 million policy on Lila's life. A policy I had never seen before. Jordan, did you sign this? I studied the document. The signature looked like mine, but something was wrong. No. I've never seen this paper in my life. I didn't even know Lila had life insurance. Exactly. And look at the date. Tyler pointed to the stamp in the corner. 3 months before she disappeared. The blood ran cold in my veins. Someone had forged my signature on a massive life insurance policy for my wife, shortly before she vanished without a trace. This was no coincidence. There's more, Tyler continued, his voice growing more tense. Cromwell isn't just a financial advisor. He has a history of working with clients who, let's say, need to dramatically reorganize their lives. People in witness protection, fugitives seeking new identities, spouses trying to escape troubled marriages. Are you saying Lila paid this guy to make her disappear? I'm saying someone paid him. The question is who? Tyler leaned forward. Because Jordan, there's something you need to understand. Lila wasn't just lying about where she was going during the day. She was terrified of something. Or rather, someone. He picked up the last folder and spread its contents on the table. They were transcripts of telephone conversations. Conversations between Lila and Cromwell. How did you get these? I asked, recognizing my wife's voice in the transcripts. The detective I hired has questionable methods, Tyler admitted. But listen to this. He pressed play on a small tape recorder. Lila's voice filled the silence, but she sounded different. Desperate. He can't find out. If he finds out, I don't know what will happen to me. Cromwell's voice replied, calm and professional, Mrs. Mitchell, I understand your concern. But you need to understand that what you are asking has permanent consequences. Once we implement the plan, there is no turning back. I know. But it's my only option. He's getting more suspicious every day. My heart stopped. They were talking about me. Lila was so afraid of me that she planned her own disappearance. But Tyler raised his hand, signaling that there was more. The recording continued. What about the life insurance? Cromwell asked. I've already taken care of that. His signature is on the document. When I die, he'll get the money, but he'll never know it was me who arranged it. It's better this way. At least he'll be financially secure. And you're sure he doesn't suspect the affair? Affair. The word hit my chest like a punch. No, Lila replied. Jordan is very trusting. He never imagines I would be capable of betraying him. He's almost too naive. Tyler stopped the recording. The silence in the room was deafening. Jordan, he said softly, Lila wasn't kidnapped. She wasn't killed. She faked her own death because she was having an affair and couldn't handle the guilt. She wanted you to think she was dead so she could start a new life with her lover. His words echoed in my mind. 3 years of mourning, 3 years of blaming myself, 3 years of being hated by her family. All based on an elaborate lie. Who is the lover? I asked, my voice coming out as a whisper. Tyler hesitated before answering. Someone we know well. Someone who has been by our side all this time, comforting our family, participating in the searches. He placed one last photo on the table. A photo of Lila kissing a man at the door of a hotel. When I saw the man's face, my world completely fell apart. It was Derek, my best friend since college. The same Derek who had been my shoulder to cry on during the worst moments after her disappearance. The same one who organized the searches, who comforted her family, who slept on my couch when I couldn't be alone. Derek didn't just steal my wife. He had spent 3 years watching me destroy myself from the inside, knowing exactly where she was. And now, finally, I knew the truth. But there was one question Tyler hadn't answered yet. If he had discovered all this, Where exactly were Lila and Derek now? They're in Seattle, Tyler said, placing another photo on the table. Derek started a technology consulting firm using the insurance money Lila fraudulently received in her own name. She's living as Madison Foster now. New identity, new life, completely financed by your pain. The photo showed Lila leaving a Starbucks, smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. Her hair was shorter, blonde now instead of her natural brown. She wore expensive clothes that we could never have afforded on our modest salaries in Portland. How did they get the insurance money if she didn't officially die? Cromwell has contacts at several insurance companies. They created false evidence of accidental death, an unrecognizable body in a car accident, forged documents, bought witnesses. Tyler ran his hands through his hair. Jordan, they stole $2 million using her identity and still made you look like a fool for 3 years. I felt the blood boil in my veins. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the systematic cruelty, the coldness with which they planned every detail. Derek had comforted me while I cried over the loss of Lila. He had slept on my couch when the nights were unbearable. He had held my hand on the first anniversary of her death. There's more, Tyler continued, picking up a different folder. I found out that Derek had been seducing Lila for over a year before she disappeared. It started when you were traveling for work on that project in Chicago. The photographs revealed encounters that had taken place right under my nose. Derek and Lila in restaurants I knew, hotels where I had considered taking her for our wedding anniversary, parks where we used to walk together. Look at the date on this one, Tyler pointed to a particularly intimate photo of them kissing. 2 weeks after your wedding anniversary. Remember the dinner you had? Derek was there, consoling you because Lila had canceled at the last minute due to a work emergency. The memory hit me like a punch in the stomach. Lila had called crying, saying her boss was forcing her to work late on an urgent project. Derek had shown up with a bottle of whiskey, and we spent the whole night drinking and talking about how lucky I was to have such a devoted wife. They were laughing at me, I muttered, more to myself than to Tyler. Worse than that, Tyler replied. I found text messages between them. Derek was documenting their reactions, Jordan. They turned your pain into entertainment. He showed me screenshots of WhatsApp conversations. Derek had sent photos of me crying, audio recordings of conversations where I talked about missing her, even secret videos of me sleeping on the couch because I couldn't get into our bedroom. Poor Jordan, read a message from Lila. He really believes I'm an angel. It'll be funny when he finds out the truth, Derek had replied. If he ever does. The tears that hadn't come when I learned of the betrayal finally fell. They weren't tears of sadness, but of such pure anger that my whole body shook. They didn't just destroy our marriage, they reveled in my destruction. Why are you showing me this now? I asked Tyler. Why not 3 years ago? Tyler lowered his head, visibly embarrassed. Because I was focused on proving you were guilty. When I started investigating, I was looking for evidence against you, not for you. It wasn't until the detective found the connections to Cromwell that I started questioning my own family. Your own family? Jordan, Tyler said slowly, my parents knew. Not the details, but they knew Lila was unhappy in her marriage. She had talked to my mother about being confused about her feelings. When she disappeared, they would rather believe you had done something to her than accept that she had run away. The betrayal deepened with each revelation. It wasn't just Lila and Derek. It was her entire family, who chose to hate me rather than face the truth about who Lila really was. What else did you find out? I asked, my voice coming out colder than I thought I was capable of. Tyler hesitated before answering. Derek is using your name on business documents. His company, Foster Tech Solutions, lists Jordan Mitchell as a founding partner. He's using your professional reputation and credentials to get contracts. That was the last straw. Not only had they stolen my wife and my money, they were stealing my professional identity, built over years of hard work. Every client Derek won using my name was another stab in the back. Tyler, I said, my voice now firm and determined, I need you to understand something. I am no longer the same person who got in this car 2 hours ago. The Jordan who cried for Lila for 3 years died in this room. I got up from my chair and began pacing the room, my brain already processing possibilities. For 3 years, I had been the passive victim of an elaborate charade. But passive victims don't build successful tech companies. Passive victims don't develop security systems for banks. And passive victims definitely don't have access to the kinds of resources and connections that I had. What are you thinking? Tyler asked, looking both concerned and curious. I'm thinking, I replied, picking up my phone and opening my contact list, that Derek and Lila made a fatal mistake. They completely underestimated who I really am. I stopped in front of the window, staring at the city lights. For 3 years, I allowed myself to be small, helpless, broken. But Derek only knew the domestic Jordan, the devoted husband. He never knew the professional who created security systems for Fortune 500 companies. The man who had friends in the FBI, contacts at the IRS, and access to resources that could make their lives very, very complicated. Tyler, I said, turning to him with a smile I hadn't felt in 3 years, I want you to understand something. They didn't just steal my life. They committed multiple federal crimes. Insurance fraud, identity theft, money laundering. And I'm going to make sure they pay for every single one of them. Jordan, you can't just. I'm not just going to do something, I interrupted. I'm going to do this right. Legal, methodical, and completely devastating. When I'm done with them, they'll be begging to go back to being the insignificant people they were before they betrayed me. I picked up the photos from the table, arranging them chronologically. Each image was now evidence, each document a piece of the puzzle I would use to build the perfect case against them. Tyler watched my transformation with fascination and a little fear. Do you have a plan? Not yet, I admitted. But I have something better. I have 3 years of pent-up anger, resources they don't even know I have access to, and most importantly, I know exactly how they think. I looked one last time at the photo of Lila smiling in Seattle, living her new life with my money and my best friend. Derek has always been arrogant, I said, putting the photos back in the folder. He always thought he was smarter than everyone else. But this time, his arrogance will be his downfall. The question was no longer whether I could expose the truth. The question was how long it would take to completely destroy the false world they had built on the ashes of my old life. And I had all the time in the world. The following Monday, I walked into my office for the first time in 3 years with a completely different purpose. During my morning, I had practically abandoned my digital security consulting company, leaving it in the hands of my partner, Alex. Now, it needs all the resources available. Jordan. Alex looked at me as if he had seen a ghost. Man, you look different. I'm back, I replied simply, heading straight for my private office. And I'm going to need access to the files from the last 3 years. All of them. During my absence, our company had grown considerably. We now worked with banks, technology companies, and even government agencies. More importantly, we had access to digital investigation tools that most people didn't even know existed. I spent the morning reviewing our contracts. One of them immediately caught my attention, a consulting agreement with the Internal Revenue Service for tracking financial fraud. The contract gave me limited but official access to databases that could track suspicious money movements. I called Margaret Chun, our contact at the IRS. Jordan. What a surprise. I'm so sorry for your loss, she said when she answered. Thank you, Margaret. Actually, I need your help with something delicate. I have evidence of possible insurance fraud that may be connected to federal crimes. I'm listening. I would like to report suspected fraud involving $2 million in life insurance, forged documents, and possible interstate money laundering. Margaret was silent for a few seconds. Do you have documentation? I have everything. And Jordan, I paused strategically, the people involved are using false identities to operate businesses in Washington. I believe this falls under multiple federal jurisdictions. Send everything via encrypted email. I'll open a preliminary investigation today. While I was organizing the documents for Margaret, Tyler called me. Jordan, you need to see this. His voice sounded urgent. Derek posted something on LinkedIn. He's promoting himself as the visionary founder of Foster Tech Solutions. And look, he's using your photo at one of the networking events. I opened LinkedIn on my computer. There was Derek, smiling at a tech conference in Seattle, wearing a suit I recognized as mine. The caption read, "Proud to present the latest advances from Foster Tech, a company I co-founded with my partner Jordan Mitchell." My partner. He was using our past personal relationship to lend credibility to his fraudulent business. There's more, Tyler continued. I found their company profile. They list you as a silent partner and are using your MIT credentials to get government contracts. This was more than insurance fraud. It was identity theft on an enterprise scale. I spent the afternoon calling old connections. People I knew from college, former colleagues, clients who trusted me. Each conversation planted a carefully calculated seed. Tim, do you remember Derek Williams from our class? I've heard he started a tech company in Seattle using some of my old research without permission. Just wanted to let you know in case he tries to do business with you. Jennifer, I need to warn you about a possible fraud involving my name. If anyone named Derek Williams or Madison Foster contacts your company, they may be using my credentials illegally. With each call, my safety net expanded. Derek had completely underestimated the reach of my professional connections. Around 6 in the evening, I received an unexpected call. Jordan Mitchell? This is Sandra Kleist from the Securities and Exchange Commission. I received an anonymous tip about identity theft in interstate financial transactions. Could you come to our office tomorrow to provide some clarification? Sure. In fact, I have information that may be relevant to your investigation. As I hung up, I smiled for the first time in years. Derek was being investigated simultaneously by the IRS, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and soon the FBI. He didn't know it yet, but his house of cards had begun to crumble. That night, I organized everything on my desk: photographs, documents, recordings, contracts. Every piece of evidence was cataloged and authenticated. But the most rewarding part of the plan was yet to come. I opened my laptop and started typing an email to Foster Tech Solutions' 5 largest clients. If you are following this journey of justice with me, subscribe to the channel to see how this web of lies will completely unravel. The email was simple and straightforward. Dear Sirs, I am Jordan Mitchell, the supposed silent partner of Foster Tech Solutions. I would like to inform you that I never authorized the use of my name or credentials in any venture with Derek Williams or Madison Foster. I suggest you carefully review any documentation containing my signature, as I have reason to believe it may be forged. I scheduled the email to be sent the next morning at 9 o'clock sharp, exactly when Derek usually arrived at the office. At 10 o'clock that night, Tyler sent me one last photo via WhatsApp. It was Lila, or Madison as she was now called, leaving an expensive restaurant in Seattle, wearing a dress that cost more than she earned in 2 months at her old job. They were living like royalty on my money, using my name to build an empire based on lies. Derek was probably toasting at that very moment, thinking he had been too clever to be caught. But he had made a fatal mistake. He had completely underestimated who I really was. For 3 years, he had only known the grieving, broken, vulnerable Jordan. He had never met the professional who created security systems to protect billions of dollars. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. Tomorrow, Derek would find out what happens when you try to destroy someone who has more resources, more connections, and more strategic intelligence than you ever imagined. The real war was just beginning. The next morning, at 8:55 a.m., I sent the email to Foster Tech Solutions' 5 largest clients. At 9:05, my phone rang. It was Margaret Chun from the Internal Revenue Service. Jordan, we need to talk urgently. We have found serious irregularities in the documentation you sent. We are preparing search and seizure warrants for today. What kind of irregularities? Falsification of federal documents, tax evasion in multiple states, money laundering through shell companies. And that's just what we found in the first 6 hours. Derek Williams and Madison Foster are in serious trouble. I hung up with a smile I hadn't felt in 3 years. But the day was just beginning. At 9:15, Tyler called me, his voice a mixture of panic and admiration. Jordan, what have you done? Derek is frantically calling everyone, saying someone is sabotaging his company. 3 clients have already canceled contracts this morning. It's just the first move, I replied calmly. Tyler, I need you to do something for me. Call your sister, Madison. Tell her you found out where she is and you want to meet her this afternoon. Alone. Jordan, I don't think. Tyler, trust me. It's time your family knew who Lila really is. At 10 o'clock, I got a call from a Seattle number I recognized from Tyler's investigations. It was Derek. Jordan, his voice was tense, forcedly casual. Man, it's been a long time. I've been thinking about you these days. How are you? The audacity was impressive. 3 years pretending to be my friend while living with my dead wife, and now he was trying to sound natural. I'm fine, Derek. Actually, I'm great. I've never felt better. Good to hear, man. Listen, I'm having some technical issues with my business system here in Seattle. Remember when we worked together in college? You were always the best at solving these problems. Could you help me out? I smiled. He was trying to officially involve me in the fraudulent company, probably so he'd have someone to blame when it all fell apart. Sure, Derek. Actually, what a coincidence. I'm planning a trip to Seattle this weekend. We can meet up. The silence on the line lasted a few seconds too long. Really? What kind of trip? Business. Some of my clients are interested in technology companies in the area. Maybe you know a few. Ah, right. Well, it would be great to see you. I hung up and immediately called Alex, my partner. Alex, get ready for a trip. We're going to Seattle today. And bring the discreet camera we use in corporate investigations. By 2 in the afternoon, we were at the airport. During the flight, I finalized the last details with Margaret Chun. The warrants were already signed. The IRS, the FBI, and the Seattle police would coordinate a simultaneous operation. Tyler had managed to set up a meeting with Lila for 6 o'clock in the afternoon at a cafe in downtown Seattle. She was nervous, according to him, but agreed to see him. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Alex and I were positioned in a surveillance van 2 blocks from the cafe. Through the audio equipment Tyler was wearing, we could hear everything. Lila. Tyler's voice echoed in our headphones. My God, you've changed so much. Tyler, her voice sounded different. More mature, but also more tense. You shouldn't have come here. Why not, sis? I'm glad to see you're alive. The silence that followed was deafening. What do you want? She finally asked, her voice now cold. I want to understand. I want to understand how my own sister could let her husband suffer for 3 years thinking she was dead. I want to understand how you could steal $2 million and build a new life while Jordan blames himself every day. You don't understand the situation. Then explain it to me, Tyler interrupted. Explain how Derek, Jordan's best friend, helped you fake your own death. Explain how you forged federal documents. Explain how you laughed at his pain for 3 years. Through the audio, we heard Lila begin to cry. Tyler, you don't understand what my marriage was like. Jordan was controlling, possessive. I felt trapped. Even though I knew it was a lie, hearing that justification still hurt. Lila, Tyler replied, his voice hardening, I spent 3 years investigating Jordan. I know exactly what your marriage was like. He adored you. He did everything for you. And you betrayed him in the cruelest way possible. It's complicated. No, it's not, Tyler cut her off. It's quite simple, actually. You're a horrible person who destroyed a good man's life because it was convenient for you. It was at that moment that our equipment picked up a new voice approaching their table. Tyler? Tyler Hayward. It was Derek. Derek, Tyler replied, feigning surprise. What are you doing here? Meeting my girlfriend, Derek replied, clearly unaware that he had just given himself away. Madison, you didn't tell me you knew this guy. Derek, Lila whispered urgently, he's my brother. The silence that followed was absolute. Through the audio, we could hear Derek processing the information. Your brother, he repeated slowly. Tyler Hayward. Lila Mitchell's brother. That's right, Tyler confirmed. Lila Mitchell's brother, who supposedly died in a car accident 3 years ago. Tyler, Derek tried to sound casual, but his voice was shaky. I think there's a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Tyler interrupted him, is that you thought you'd never be found out. That was when I walked into the cafe. Derek saw me first. The blood drained completely from his face. Lila turned to see what had caused his reaction, and when she saw me, she began to shake visibly. I walked calmly over to the table where the three of them were sitting and pulled up a chair. "Hello, Lila," I said, my voice perfectly controlled. Or should I say Madison? She couldn't respond. She just stared at me as if she were seeing a ghost. "Derek," I continued, turning to my former best friend, "thank you for taking my call this morning. It was very helpful." "Jordan," Derek stammered, "I can explain." "Can you?" I asked, placing my phone on the table. On the screen, it was recording our conversation. "Because I'd be interested to hear your explanation. Especially considering the FBI is on its way." "The FBI?" Lila whispered. "Of course. Insurance fraud, falsification of federal documents, interstate identity theft. Those are federal crimes, Lila. Or did you think you could steal $2 million and just disappear?" Derek tried to get up, but Alex appeared behind him, blocking his exit. "Sit down, Derek," Alex said calmly. "The conversation is just beginning." "Jordan," Lila tried, tears now streaming down her face, "you need to understand." "Understand what?" I asked. "That you spent 3 years laughing at my pain? That Derek slept on my couch while I cried, knowing exactly where you were? That you used my identity to build an empire based on federal crimes?" Derek finally found his voice. "Man, it was her idea. I just..." "Lies," Lila shouted. "You came up with the insurance scheme." And there, across a table in a Seattle coffee shop, my two traitors began turning on each other. Each accusation revealed more details of their elaborate deception. Each justification exposed more crimes. It was when the federal agents entered the cafe that Derek finally understood the magnitude of what was happening. "Ms. Foster," said the lead agent, approaching the table, "or should I say Ms. Mitchell? I'm arresting you both for multiple federal violations." As the handcuffs clicked around Lila and Derek's wrists, she looked at me one last time. "Jordan, I loved you," she whispered. "No," I replied, rising from my chair, "you loved the idea of using me. But that's over now." Tyler looked at me with a mixture of admiration and shock. "Jordan, how did you manage to coordinate all this?" I smiled, watching Derek and Lila being escorted out of the cafe under the curious stares of the other customers. "Tyler," I said, putting my phone away, "for 3 years, I was the victim in their story. Today, they found out who I really am when I'm not crying over someone who didn't deserve my tears." But as we left the cafe, I knew that true satisfaction was yet to come. The arrests were just the beginning. Derek and Lila were about to discover that destroying someone's life has consequences that extend far beyond a prison cell. The question now was not whether they would pay for what they had done. It was whether they would survive the full weight of justice that was about to come crashing down on them. 6 months later, I was sitting in the front row of the Seattle federal courtroom, watching Derek and Lila receive their sentences. Judge Richard Martinez read the verdicts with a severity that echoed through the silent room. "Derek Williams, you have been found guilty on 17 federal counts, including insurance fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and falsification of federal documents. This court sentences you to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation." Derek remained still as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, but I could see his hands shaking. 12 years. He was 34, he would be 46 when he got out, if he was lucky. "Lila Mitchell, also known as Madison Foster," the judge continued, "you have been found guilty on 15 federal counts. Considering your partial cooperation with authorities, this court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison." Lila turned to look at me one last time before being escorted out. Her eyes were red, her face swollen from crying. Throughout the trial, she had tried to argue that Derek had manipulated her, that she was a victim of circumstance. But the recordings Tyler had collected told a different story, of a woman who had actively participated in every step of the fraud. Federal prosecutor Thomas Reed had congratulated me after the verdict. "Mr. Mitchell, your investigative work was exceptional. We rarely see a civil case turn into such a successful federal operation." But the real satisfaction didn't come from the prison sentences. It came from what we discovered during the investigation. Derek had used my identity to defraud not only insurance companies, but also corporate clients in 3 different states. Foster Tech Solutions had fraudulent contracts valued at over $5 million. When everything was audited and recovered, we discovered that they had stolen much more than I had ever imagined. The court-ordered restitution was $7.3 million, money that Derek and Lila obviously didn't have. All of their assets were seized: the house in Seattle, the luxury cars, the bank accounts, even the jewelry Lila wore during the trial. Tyler came to see me after the sentencing. "Jordan, I need to formally apologize to you. For 3 years, I believed you were responsible for my sister's disappearance. I said terrible things about you to our family, to our friends." "Tyler," I replied, "you were protecting someone you loved. I can't blame you for that." "Even so," he insisted, "I want you to know that our entire family now understands who you really are. My parents want to meet with you. They want to apologize in person." I met with Lila's parents a week later in Portland. It was a difficult but necessary conversation. Margaret Hayward, who had previously looked at me with suspicion and coldness, cried when she saw the full evidence of what her daughter had done. "Jordan," she said, holding my hands, "we lost our daughter a long time ago. The Lila you married, the girl we raised, she died long before she staged her own death. The person you exposed is not the one we thought we knew." Robert Hayward, her father, was even more direct. "You gave us the truth, even when that truth was painful. That took courage and integrity that we didn't have. But the consequences extended far beyond prison sentences. Derek lost his professional license in information technology. When he is released, he will not be able to work in any position that involves access to financial systems or personal data. Essentially, his career in technology is over forever. Lila will face deportation after serving her sentence. We discovered that she had lied about her immigration documentation throughout our marriage. When she is released, she will be sent back to Canada, where she has citizenship, but she will never be able to return to the United States." Richard Cromwell, the consultant who helped orchestrate the fraud, received a 15-year sentence. His company was dissolved, and all his assets were confiscated to compensate the victims of decades of fraudulent operations. As for me, the last 6 months have been transformative in ways I never expected. First, we significantly expanded our security consulting firm. The Derek Lila case attracted national attention, and we began receiving contracts from government agencies and multinational corporations interested in our digital investigation methods. Alex and I hired 15 new employees and opened offices in 3 cities. Second, I used my experience to create a counseling program for victims of identity fraud. We work pro bono with people who have been through similar situations, helping them rebuild their lives and seek justice. We have already helped over 200 families in just 6 months. Third, and perhaps most importantly, I rediscovered who I really was before Lila. During our marriage, I had become a diminished version of myself. Always second best, always trying to please, always doubting my own worth. Her betrayal, as painful as it was, freed me from that emotional prison. I learned that loving someone does not mean accepting disrespect. That broken trust can be rebuilt, but only with people who deserve that second chance. And that true strength does not come from avoiding pain, but from going through it with integrity intact. 6 months after the trial, I received a letter in prison. It was from Lila. "Jordan," she wrote, "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness. I know words can't undo what I did. But I need you to know that the person who betrayed you was not who I really wanted to be. For 3 years, I lived such an elaborate lie that I began to believe it. When I look back now, I don't recognize the woman who made those decisions." The letter went on for pages, full of regret and attempts at explanation. At the end, she asked if we could talk, if there was any chance she could make amends with me. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the fireplace of my new home. Not out of anger or resentment, but because some doors, once closed, should remain that way forever. Tyler asked me if I planned to respond. "No," I told him. "Forgiveness does not require reconciliation. I forgave Lila and Derek. I forgave them for myself, so I could move on. But forgiving does not mean forgetting or allowing them back into my life." Today, 2 years after discovering the truth, my life is unrecognizable. Our company was featured on the cover of Forbes magazine as one of the fastest-growing startups in digital security. I've been invited to speak at conferences on fraud prevention and post-trauma rebuilding. I wrote a book about my experience that became a New York Times bestseller. But more important than any professional success, I rediscovered the ability to trust and be trusted. 6 months ago, I met Sarah, a victims' rights attorney who has worked on several of our pro bono cases. She knows my whole story, understands my scars, and still chooses to stay. Not out of pity or a need to fix me, but because she recognizes the person I have become through adversity. On the last anniversary of Derek and Lila's sentencing, Tyler and I met at the same coffee shop in Seattle where it all began. "Do you have any regrets?" he asked me. I thought carefully before answering. I regret wasting 3 years of my life believing a lie. But I have no regrets about how I chose to deal with the truth when it came to light. "You destroyed them completely," Tyler observed. "Derek will never recover professionally. Lila lost everything: country, family, future." "I didn't destroy them," I corrected. "They built their own destruction with every selfish decision they made. I just made sure the consequences reached those who truly deserved them." Tyler nodded, understanding. "What if you could go back in time? If you could prevent all this pain from the beginning?" The answer came without hesitation. "I wouldn't change a thing. The pain taught me who I really am when everything is at stake. It showed me that I am stronger, more resilient, and more capable than I ever imagined. Derek and Lila tried to break me, but they only helped me discover that I am unbreakable." If you are following this journey of rebuilding injustice, subscribe to the channel for more stories of people who turned their greatest betrayals into their greatest victories. Because sometimes, finding out who is really on your side requires first finding out who never was. Last week, I received an email from Derek in prison. It was automatically rejected by my spam filter. Not because I set it up that way out of anger, but because some people permanently lose the right to access your life. The last time I heard from Lila, she was working in a laundromat in Canada, living with a distant aunt. I was signing the contract for my second book. The difference between revenge and justice is simple. Revenge seeks to cause pain equivalent to what was received. Justice seeks to restore balance and prevent future injustices. Derek and Lila didn't suffer because I wanted to hurt them. They suffered because their actions had natural consequences that were finally enforced. And me? I discovered that the opposite of being betrayed is not to trust blindly again. It is learning to trust wisely, to recognize true signs of character, and to build relationships based on mutual transparency. 3 years of pain taught me a lesson that no professional success could. You only discover your true strength when your own life explodes around you and you decide to rebuild it better than it was before.